They're dead, Dave.
What, Captain Hollister?
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What, Todd Hunter? What, Selby? Not Jen.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Everybody's Dead Dave. This is our Red Dwarf review podcast with two of us hosting. There's myself, Adam Martyn, who is a relatively new fan of Red Dwarf. This is my first time, and I am joined by
Phil Hawkins, who has been watching the series since the 90s. Long-time fan and a newbie joined together for two different perspectives.
Two different perspectives, it's what we like. If this is your first time joining us, first of all, hello. We highly advise you go back and check out the previous episodes, especially if you're like me watching for the first time. They're a few bit more of a seasoned veteran, you might dip in and out. But we have reached the end of Series 3, which for us seems a bit mad, because it feels a bit crazy we've already reached the end of the third series. Episode 6, which is called The Last Day, originally broadcast on the 19th of December 1989, and the synopsis goes a little something like this. Lister receives a pre-recorded message from Jim Reaper, head of Diva Droid International, the company that created Kryten, and Kryten is ordered to be dismantled within 24 hours to be replaced with a new model. And in those 24 hours, Lister attempts to throw him a night to remember. And that is a rough plot synopsis. So, yeah, very ominous title, isn't it? The Last Day.
Yeah. What did you, had you read the synopsis before you started watching it?
No, I always like to try and go into these as completely fresh as I can. I've only had one or two where, you say you're doing a Red Dwarf podcast and someone might say, oh, have you got to, say polymorph yet? Or something like that, and they'll tell you a bit about that. But, yeah, as much as I can, I like to do it completely fresh. So I didn't know this was sort of a Kryten-centric episode. I didn't know... Because I thought, again, reading the title, I thought, oh, did they potentially think the show could end here? Because it has that connotation of, I thought it could be about anything, but,
Yeah, because obviously I already knew what it was the rough gist of what it was going to be about, even if I didn't remember the exact sort of story beats. But, I was trying to think, well, what would that make me think? It might make me think that it's a heavily flashback episode back to the day before the accident that wiped out the crew. It could be the last day of Earth. It could be the last. There were several things that if you were coming to this fresh, you could think it was.
God, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if I'd have seen that for the first time in the late 80s, I think that whole thing of me thinking it could be the finale of the show in general would be more of a thing, because obviously I know that there are more series after this, so it clearly wasn't the end. But yeah, it just has that connotation. And we get the title sequence as always, which is lovely. As I said, I think I am still missing that slower arrangement. I've said a few times now, but I do love the theme song as it is now and the titles. That's really cool. And we open with Lister watching some boxing, which is revealed to be a female topless boxing, and it, like we've said before, this is definitely one of those jokes that wouldn't necessarily fly or maybe be done in a more tasteful way, shall we say?
Yeah, possibly. It's a strange one because I both slightly cringed, but also it did get a laugh out of me.
Okay,
possibly because
enough.
I just wasn't expecting that twist. You had the setup of the boxing. Oh, what you watching? Oh, I'm watching boxing. And then when Kryten goes,
female topless boxing?
Talk to me.
But they're not even hitting each other. They just appear to be standing in the center of the ring and jiggling up and down.
I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And that did kind of make me laugh.
That's fair. Yeah, it did surprise me when he said it. I think for me it was just the bit where I cringed a bit was when he was like, oh, well, they're not really fighting. They're just sort of jiggling up and down. I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
I was like, jokes happen now. Like cut it there. But again, I think it's one of those, like we've said before on Red Dwarf, it's the late 80s. It was a different time 30 years ago. But yeah, the actual reveal of the joke made me chuckle. But I just thought that should have been it for me. I was like, okay, we've had the reveal. That's that. But aside from that, Lister shows how much of a scruff he is, like us working class northerners, by getting the food out the bin because he's
because
he's
Kryten has
listed.
brought him in his breakfast, and he starts by
Yes.
saying that, "Oh, no, I don't want you to be a servant," which is, I thought, a nice tie back to how he was trying to encourage Kryten back in series 2 when we first met Kryten, played by a different actor. How he was trying to encourage him to break away from his programming and not, just do what you're told, be a bit of a rebel. And so I like that he's still got that going for him, and he wants to try and encourage Kryten to not just be a servant, but he also does kind of like to benefit from the things that Kryten does as well.
When
so
it
when
suits him, he's all for it,
because he's like, "No, I don't want you cooking me breakfast," and then Kryten puts the breakfast in the bin, and as soon as Kryten's gone out of the room, he's like, "Oh, actually, that looks..."
he's back in
You can see his
there,
thought process. That looks really good. I'm just going to go and scoop that out of the bin.
Absolutely. It's like you say, it's absolutely, when it benefits him, he's all for it. When it doesn't, he's like, "Nah, man, you don't have to do that." But it leads nicely into, I guess, the main plot point of this episode, which is the gang get an informational tape, which is basically saying that it's time for Kryten to shut himself down. He's had his time, and I didn't notice, because it's like a little infomercial, I didn't realise till the credits that Jim Reaper is in fact Robert Llewellyn, the same actor who plays Kryten. But I never guessed, literally until the credits. I had no idea.
Well, Kryten's under so much, that oddly shaped head that you wouldn't necessarily notice. And of course, he's got a different accent as well, because Jim Reaper is being British, whereas as Kryten, he puts on a Canadian accent. So you wouldn't necessarily notice unless you knew the actors really well. And
I was going to say, it's in the voice as well, because with some actors, they have... Well, I'm not saying that Robert Llewellyn did make an effort, of course, but with some actors, they either don't put that much effort in, or in some cases, it's not their fault, they just have such a recognisable tone to their voice that, like John Pertwee, for example, master of different voices, but I must think there was some parts where, like, no matter what he was doing, you sort of knew it was, you could tell it was John Pertwee doing it. And whereas with Robert Llewellyn, I had no idea. Like, as I say, till the credits, I was like, I wonder who that actor is. And I was like, oh, it's the same guy. And a nice little play on the name as well, Jim Reaper. I wonder what that sounds like, So,
wait, what am I missing there?
Grim Reaper.
Oh, Grim Reaper, of course. Yes.
Yeah. No, I saw it in the credits again. I think it was when I read it. I didn't clock it when I heard his name, but when I saw it in the credits, I was like, oh yeah, Jim Reaper, Grim Reaper, because it's all, it's all about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I did not spot that.
That's all right.
But yeah, that is actually really clever.
It is really clever. And so basically Kryten has 24 hours left before he has to deactivate, and some new bot comes swanning in, and it seems a bit of a blow to the other lads, mainly to Lister, isn't it?
Rimmer just kind of
doesn't
shoves
seem
it
that
off.
bothered. And Kat's nowhere to be seen for the first half of the episode, really. Which, I don't know, it feels a bit of a shame, because we've talked about how, I think we said, in series 1 and 2, Kat's more like a recurring side character than part of the main cast, whereas I think we felt this series, that's changed a bit, and he does feel like one of the gang. But again, we don't really see him until, I think, about halfway through, when they're planning for the big party, do we? He doesn't...
No, he's not a massive feature of this episode. And kind of Rimmer isn't that much of a feature of this episode either, really. It's kind of a Kryten and Lister episode.
Yeah.
Mostly.
I kind of think that works, though, in a way, because obviously it is clear that, yes, like, Lister and Kryten have the biggest connection out of those characters, so it would make sense to focus on them. But yeah, I don't know, it's just... I thought in other episodes where it was, say, focused on Rimmer or focus on Lister or whatever, they found ways to get the others in there substantially enough, and then in this one they didn't as much. I mean, it wasn't a big detriment, but I did notice it. I was like, oh, there Cat is, with 10 minutes left to go or whatever. But what do you think about this whole idea that Kryten has? Because, he believes he'll go to Silicon Heaven, as it's called, and the all the plays on the electronic
it's one of
Bible.
This episode is a one that does sort of tackle some sort of concepts and ideas, and seems to be making a point. Whereas, which series 1 and 2 did a lot, but series 3 has shied away from a bit more. I think their sort of you had episodes in series 1 and 2 discussing quite serious points like sexism and things like
Yes,
that.
yeah.
They've moved away from that to the straight out comedy, I think, in series 3.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
fine, but it was quite nice to see some sort of ideas broached upon, even if I think if this was done in series 1 or 2, you probably would have got more of a focus on that.
Yeah, probably.
Whereas it's more used as, they are exploring it a little bit, but in a very contained, like 1 or 2 scenes type way, rather than the whole episode being the focus of that.
Yeah, and I think both, like you say, I think both ways work. Whichever way you wanna do it. I sort of like the whole hypocrisy angle of it. The fact that Kryten's even though he's an android, he's programmed to believe an afterlife exists, and then as soon as Alistair's like, what about our heaven? He's like, oh, you guys don't have a heaven. That's just what they tell you, so you don't go nuts. It's that whole grand. Again, I'm not showing disrespect to anyone who is religious who might be listening, but in comedy, it's done so often, isn't it? There are these great holes that you could argue in religion that get played, and I think that's one of them. It's that hypocrisy sort of thing, like, oh, my thing is real, but your thing isn't.
Yeah, my thing is real, but your thing is silly.
Yeah, exactly. And in Kryten's case, like, oh, I have the electronic Bible, therefore it must be real, whereas you don't have anything, so therefore it's not real. It's but I think it's done in a way that I think it's tongue-in-cheek enough. I'm not religious myself, but I'd like to think if you showed this to someone who maybe was, that they'd find it somewhat comical. Well, again, it's hard for me not being religious, but I'd like to think people wouldn't find, they wouldn't go, this is disgraceful, call the church, this is an insult.
Yeah, same.
It's just a very glib... Yeah.
Similarly, I'm not religious, so it would be interesting to have a third perspective of somebody that is religious to be able to sort of see what they think. But in anything with life, you've got to have at least an element of being able to laugh at yourself, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't think this crosses that line. I don't think it would. Like, I've been watching things and shared a laugh with things that have like slightly taken the mick out of atheists before.
Sure, yeah.
Because, it's done in a funny way, and I'm more than happy for that to be the case. Nothing should be completely off limits to comedy.
Sure, no, I agree.
There are whether or not, but there are sort of degrees, and whether or not there is, it can be done respectfully, but also in a comedy way. You can send up elements of things, and it'd still not be crossing the line, I think.
Yeah, and that third perspective would be great. I mean, anyone listening, if you are religious, and I'm sure we'd love to hear what your take on it was. Let us know in the comments or something, because I'd be really curious to see how someone who is religious takes something like this. And what you were saying about things being poked at, this was interesting because the next scene is Lister and Rimmer. Lister's laying it all down to him, and Rimmer's, as you said, sort of not bothered. And it leads into a joke where Rimmer talks about his time in the Samaritans.
Yeah, I had this down as well, because it's something that they do go back to quite a lot. They seem to have this dark humour edge on the show. And it's a topic, sort of suicide humour, that they've gone back to a few times in the show.
No, for real. And
I know previously you've said it, I think, if I'm right in thinking, you've said it's made you feel a little bit uneasy. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the first time, I think it was either in the first or second episode, where he makes a comment about his dad killing him, committing suicide. And I think in that instance, that literally came out of nowhere. Like, that was so, and now we're doing this. It's like, whoa, okay. Whereas, I think most people know what the Samaritans are. So when you introduce that, I sort of thought to myself, okay, we're probably going to get something along those lines. And I'm not, like you were saying with religion, I'm not saying suicide can't be used in comedy. Some people say sometimes how people deal with things like that is to laugh, which is complete, if that works for you, that's
gallows humor,
fair enough.
yeah.
Gallows humor. I just think for me, I think it's a very personal interpretation. I just think having known and know people who have struggled with that before, I think just for me, I was a bit like, I get where they're coming from, but it's just not landing with me. But that's not necessarily their fault. That's just my own personal subjective taking from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. I personally, this one, out of all of the times that they've sort of broached this sort of suicide dark humor subject, I think this was probably done the best. partly because, like you say, it was kind of set up a bit more. It wasn't just completely out of the blue. They didn't just randomly drop in a line about somebody committing suicide.
Yeah.
The fact that they built it up with talking about the Samaritan's hotline, which you know what the Samaritan's hotline tends to be used for.
Yes.
And then it gave it the time to sort of prepare for the audience to prepare themselves for that there would be some joke around this, not necessarily knowing exactly what the joke would be, but and I think that the punchline was a funny one, that somebody that everybody he spoke to did commit suicide, and one person wasn't even trying to contact the Samaritan.
Yeah, just wanted the cricket scores or whatever. So yeah, no, I mean, yeah, for anyone listening, I'm not saying it like you shouldn't laugh at it. Like, if you genuinely find it funny, that is more than fair enough. I just think for me, like at this particular moment in time, it wasn't clicking with me. But that, again, I'm not saying it's a badly written joke or that it shouldn't be in the show. I think it's like any of those sort of more sensitive ones, isn't it? It's very much, well, comedy's subjective anyway, but it's even more subjective, I think, when you get to things like that, because I'm sure there'll be some people who think, I don't want to joke about that, full stop, it shouldn't be in there, whatever. Which that's their view. That's fine. Some people don't mind. Do you know what I mean? It's such a open thing to discuss, I suppose. But yeah. I just thought I'd draw attention to it, just because I know it stood out for me. So yeah.
As well as the sort of commentary on the religious stuff, which plays into the episode, there was also a sort of commentary on a topic which I think probably is now even more prevalent today than it was in the 80s when this was made, of technology having planned obsolescence.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, Kryten literally comes out and says, if we lasted forever, how would the manufacturers sell their latest models?
Yeah. Apple looking squarely at you, probably.
Yes. I say recording part of this on my Apple iPhone, which me recording which on battery an iMac, does not last anywhere near as long as it used to.
Oh, that's the sad thing, isn't it? We say it, but we all probably have at least one bit of Apple or any of those tech companies. He's right, basically. Yeah, he's absolutely. I mean, I'm sure it was happening in the 80s with whatever tech was around then, but yeah, you're right. Even more now. iPhones
now,
come out
of course,
like twice a year.
It's sort of a look into the future, really, because back then most things wouldn't have been run by, most technology people had in their houses wouldn't have been run by computers. Whereas, and the part of the issue isn't that anything of his is breaking down. It's that there is a program that the chip inside him, the software, is telling him to do something, and therefore that's like when with the whole Apple thing. Obviously, the controversy was last year or the year before was that their software updates slowed down older phones.
Absolutely.
So it seems much more prevalent now than it would have been in the 80s, so it's quite a pertinent thing to be watching now. It's I mean, now some people say it's like the subtle swipe at, like, I don't know, like capitalism and that whole fast upgrading thing, but it is an eerie foreshadowing of what was to come and what now is. I mean, and it is that sad thing of as you say, they will slow down your hardware to make you think you need a new one just for the sake of more money. And it's a cycle that's yet to be broken, seemingly, but maybe it will one day. Who knows? But it's interesting for sure. Going back to the religion thing, the other element of religion, we obviously got the Kryten stuff, but we get Rimmer commenting on religion as well, and that his parents were Seventh-day Hoppists.
Hoppists, yeah.
And this is kind of a commentary as well, a commentary on a different aspect of religion. You got the kind of the hypocrisy element that Kryten saying, "Oh, your ideas are silly, but mine are real." But this is kind of like a commentary on how things get things get misheard and misinterpreted, and basically they had a version of his parents, or this Hoppist religion had a version of the Bible where there was a misprint, and instead of hope, it got printed as hop, and therefore they hop to church every Sunday because of a misprint. It's kind of a commentary on how even the religions we have now, how they might be different from what their original intention was, because people have interpreted them different ways, and maybe misheard some things or misunderstood some things, and it can get twisted. I thought that was quite interesting too.
No, it is. It's funny how much, like you say, you can unpack from a sci-fi comedy show from the late 80s. But yeah, I mean, they knew what they were doing. Lister essentially plans to have a big party, a big blowout for Kryten's last evening, one of which involves a Marilyn Monroe built hero robot, which I must admit I found funny, like seeing that and him trying to build it, and it will pay off later, of course. And and then in the officers' club, there's a really sweet setup, and they basically throw a party for Kryten, which I must admit I thought was quite sweet for the most part.
The planning and stuff beforehand. We get a name for a scutter, Bob. One of the scutters is called Bob, according to Kryten.
Bob the Scutter.
I have to try and remember that.
No, it was. I just really, that whole scene though, I really liked it. The whole giving the presents, and even though there's lots of laughs in there, just that whole thing was just really, It was very touching from the kind of Kryten angle of thinking this is his last day and everyone saying goodbye, and the presents, Cats going like open mine, and getting really excited, and it being like an earring he hated. An earring he hates. Yeah.
Oh, this is an earring you hated.
I love that. Yeah,
that was good. And then we get Lister actually got quite a deep emotional bit, about him being abandoned when he was a child, as a baby.
Yes, yeah, we do. Which again surprised me because, as you said, we haven't had this before. And what I wrote was, while I liked it and Craig Charles sold it, I put, we're learning a lot about Lister. Wonder if this will stick the continuity landing. Because as you know, Phil, and I'm sure a lot of yous know now, sometimes they'll introduce these sort of big things for characters, and then we'll either never hear about it again, or it gets brought up 3 or 4 series later. So I'll be curious to see if this gets I'm not saying we have to explore that whole origin thing, but I'll be curious to see if it gets, brought up again, or if this is literally just a one-time line, so to speak.
Yes,
but it was
I
good,
love these bits when you're like, you wonder about whether or not something's going to get brought up again, and there's me sitting there knowing whether or not it is.
And you know if they do, yeah.
There'll be people in the comments. Resist spoiling it, please.
Yeah, please don't spoil it for me. You can give me vague hints, but don't spoil it outright. We see the Marilyn Monroe droid, which I wrote is hilarious and terrifying. Hilarious in its like jaded movements and going through walls, but by God, it looks terrifying. Like
but I love the fact that Kryten is like, it's so realistic.
Yeah, that might be a contender for my funniest moment. Just again, that goodness me, it's Marilyn Monroe. So, wonderful. One thing I will say though is, when they're telling stories about their first, like famous firsts, as Rimmer calls it. The Uncle Frank joke I wrote was interesting because it implies one thing, but then he's specific, because isn't the joke, he says, "Oh, he was looking for my mum."
Yeah,
that's how he dispels it. But still, there was part of me that thought, I don't know, like the way it's set up. Well, for me at least, made me believe it was something. It implied something else to me.
It starts by because he's basically talking about his cousins, his cousins who he thought fancied him. So I thought it was going down a kind of cringy kissing cousins route.
Yeah.
And then it went even further and went to even cringier. Uncle Frank accidentally kissing him.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's up for, the whole resolution's up for interpretation, because he says he was looking for his mum, whereas it could. I just sort of thought,
I think the ending is that, I believe that. I think he was looking. I think the implication is that Uncle Frank was having an affair with his mum.
Yeah.
As evidenced by the later line, like,
I never had a mum neither.
Well, you can all have mine. Everyone else did.
Yeah, no, I thought the joke was, Chris Barry's deadpan reveal, like, it was Uncle Frank, like, it was very well played. Yeah, it just left me wondering for a hot second. And Hattie as well as Holly, I wrote, she's definitely settled into it now. She's still definitely got that. She's got the deadpanness of the character, but there was those little moments where, like, she goes for a joke and she's like, "Oh, and tomorrow you'll be Ooh, and like, all the little smiles and do you know what I mean? She's really like made it her own now, which is great.
We didn't see too much of her, really.
No,
this
we
episode,
didn't.
But yeah, where she did pop up, yeah, I agree. She's
great,
settled into the role now, and I think they're, as I said last week, they're writing for her strengths now.
Oh, absolutely. And Kryten drinking I call it the android alcohol. We got to see the Max Headroom effect again. The ever-popular
Max Headroom moment. It's going to be a recurring thing.
That must have just been it in the late 80s. Like, oh, we need to simulate an android malfunctioning. Oh, just do the repeat the tape a few times. I mean, it works. Like, don't give it... I think, once you see it in Max Headroom, you can't... For me, at least, I can't unsee it now. Anytime that happens, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's a Max Headroom moment. But, yeah it
just
worked.
after that, when they're doing the presents, this is probably the only, like, negative note I have, which is that when... And it's a really small thing, but when Kryten has gotten the computer chip present from Holly, and he's saying, "Oh, this is and what lists off whatever it is."
Oh yeah.
It sounds fine, but if you're watching the screen, it totally looks like he's reading. Like he's reading. He couldn't remember that he's reading it because
really?
the way you can just sort of tell his eyes scanning it, his face like down. It was quite obvious that he was, as an actor, sort of reading that rather than not from his delivery.
Okay.
It's as a sight reading delivery.
But you could see, as you say, like the eyes. It wasn't just Kryten recognised it from looking at it. He was reading what was on it. Yeah. Okay, it's interesting you say that because I didn't notice that, but I thought earlier when going back to Jim Reaper, I thought to me it looked very obvious he was reading off an autocue. Because I could see his eyes sort of going left to right, which I think in that context, a sort of infomercial, I think you can get if that was the intent, you can get away with that a bit more. But yeah, it's funny. I noticed it there, but I didn't notice it when he was reading the chip at all. So
interesting.
But fair enough. I mean, yeah, it's a long sequence, so I kind of get maybe why I was like, guys, I'm just gonna have to read it. But yeah, I'll have to double check that and see if I can spot it because I didn't see it.
We get another earlier on again, we get another good Chris Barry impersonation as well. He does a Kryten, which is the first time we've heard him do a Kryten. We've had him in previous seasons doing the rest of the crew, doing Norman Lovett's Holly, doing Kat, doing Lister. Now we get him doing Kryten. And again, Chris Barry, brilliant impersonator.
Absolutely. I think it was when we had Billy on, he said, and he's right, he's a master mimic. He's very good at mimicking both tone and physicality, and he was great. And after the whole party shenanigans, it's the morning after, we've all been there, everyone's slightly hungover, but before they wake up we get a little glimpse of Kryten's potential replacement, which is it Hudson 10?
Yeah, I think so. Hudson or Huxon, something like that. I recognised the actor, and I was...
Oh, did you? Yeah.
And I was like, where do I recognise him from? So I looked him up on IMDb, and he was... Did you ever watch the BBC Robin Hood series from 2006?
From 2006? I watched a bit of it.
It was in the Doctor Who slot on a Saturday night when Doctor Who wasn't on the air.
Yeah.
And he was Little John in that.
Oh, no way. I'll have to watch that. I've watched that show in ages, but I used to watch that back in the day, yeah. Oh, cool. What's it? It's Gordon something, isn't it, his name?
Gordon Kennedy.
And I must admit, in the infomercial, when he's showing off that whole, like, his armour and the helmet looked very Starship Troopers. And just his whole look was very late 80s laser tag. Like, do you know what I mean? I mean, it's very like, cute and charming, but... Yeah, it felt very late 80s. Like, this is what a high-tech android looks like,
Yeah, but he's got a human looking head as opposed to Kryten's, which makes sense, being an upgraded newer model, I guess. Get more realistic.
And when they
with some great eyeshadow.
Some wonderful eyeshadow. They've perfected eyeshadow there. In Android.
Who would have thought that androids would spend so much time on their makeup?
Honestly, it's a big thing for androids, clearly. But I must admit, when they wake up, one of the best moments, and this is a contender for my funniest moment, is Lister saying, "We're on a mining ship 3 million years in the future. Can someone please explain how I have this traffic cone?" Because for anyone who's been on, it happens. You just end up with like I've ended up with traffic cones before. But yeah, I just thought that was such. Yeah.
Everyone's ended up with a traffic cone at one point or another, haven't they?
Oh God, yeah. I just thought it was such a perfect, like, perfect reference that so many people can get behind, and the way it was played out was brilliant. So, I preferred that to the whole. I know Cats was a bit more extreme with the policewoman's hat and the suspenders, but yeah, just the whole traffic that sent me under. That did. I loved that bit.
Yeah, that was a good bit.
I did actually quite like Kryten's. He has a sort of a speech to them, about how he really enjoyed his night and he wanted, a bit more, and how he's. I found that whole segment quite touching, really. How he'd sort of discovered himself, I guess, if you like.
I like also how this whole, they, for the most part, Rimmer being a slight exception, really go to stand up for him when the new one's on its way. And they're like, we're not going to replace you. Which does make me think they've had a bit of character growth from... Because if you remember back to Queeg, when they first found out that Holly was getting replaced, they were a bit like... Slightly like, we might get a better version. And then they soon realised that it's not better. And then they rally behind Holly.
Yeah.
But here, they're rallying behind it...
Straight away. From the get-go, yeah. Absolutely. No, it's definitely.
It feels like they've learned something in the intervening year and a bit since.
They've learned something along the way, which is always good. I must admit, though, for all I mocked Hudson earlier, when we see him arrive, that whole setup coming through the door, the music, it was kind of creepy. It was set up really, really well. That he's meant to be this dominating force, I suppose. What did you think of his entrance? I thought it was pretty good.
He looks like he has a physical presence that would be a major threat. I would be scared if I was facing down the barrel of his gun. And
what did you think of the voice?
The very gravelly voice.
The very, low gravelly voice. Because
given the way he's meant to be he's not like a battle droid. He's meant to be a replacement for a service mechanoid who will do your laundry. It did seem a little bit OTT.
Yeah, and I get they were probably trying to go for that whole, he's this really creepy thing that enjoys, he says he enjoys dismembering other androids, I suppose, but I just found sometimes this is more towards the climax of the battle, that sometimes I found it hard to hear him when you had all the music going on and other things happening. Because obviously when you're doing a voice that low, it's hard to get also the volume, I guess.
Yeah.
There were just some bit... I don't think he said anything of revolutionary importance in those intervening bits, but I just found sometimes there was... Yeah, do you know what I mean? It was just hard on occasions to hear what he was saying, and I probably should have turned subtitles on, but I didn't. So,
how did you feel about how he was defeated in the end? How Kryten defeated him?
The resolution. Well, first of all, I will say I love the whole he can't harm humans joke, and then he scans them all. That was great. Yeah, especially with Lister. And he goes,
hologram, not a deceased human, therefore viable target. Cat evolved from cat's viable target. Lister. Barely human. What the hell?
Yeah, that was good. I quite liked it, even though it was in the vain tradition of Red Dwarf, as we've said, the very, quick endings. It's like, right, we've sorted it, that's it. I kind of liked it, though. The whole, again, going back to the idea of the Silicon Heaven, obviously, Kryten's he's used what has been said to him by Lister, that no such place exists, to essentially short-circuit Hudson, which I also thought was quite funny, the way Hudson dealt with it. That low gravelly voice worked, where did the calculators go? I thought that was brilliant.
That's the reoccurring sort of thing, isn't it? Because Kryten asked that earlier on in the episode as well, didn't he? Where did all the calculators go?
It was a good bit. And and obviously, that he gets deactivated, and then Kryten reveals the way he says, but he didn't know that I was lying. Of course there's a Silicon Heaven. Where did the calculators go? And that's what we end on. And even that, it's very tongue-in-cheek, and but I don't know, I just like it, because we're reusing, it's not completely out of the blue. You're using something that's been set up and established earlier in the episode. It's used to quite comedic effect. The comedy plays out well. It's not one of those Red Dwarf endings where the resolution comes out of absolutely nowhere. And it's like, we've sorted it now. That's it then. Roll credits. Yeah, I liked it. And I know they don't really do season finales, quote unquote. But as the last episode of series 3, yeah, I quite liked it as a resolution. What about you? What did you think?
Yeah, I think it worked. It tied into the themes that they'd set up earlier, and it ended on a funny line. That whole calculator line, because it had been used repeatedly. I think that's what makes it work. Because it had been used by Kryten, and then by the new mechanoid, and then again by him at the end as a kind of reveal of like, no, of course I still believe in it.
Yeah, thank God it was a funny line, because we've had some episodes where I think I've said sometimes even though they go for the comedy it doesn't land, but yeah, this one really did land for me, so I was happy with that ending. Would have been like, obviously these are only 25-minute episodes. I thought it would have been cool to see a bit more of like Hudson, if that whole battle scene, if you like, had been even a bit more, I thought that could have been cool. But considering the time constraints, they fit everything into this episode quite nicely. I think, again, we've said sometimes we feel plot points are either a bit rushed or maybe could have done with another episode, although I know they don't really, well, at the moment, they don't really do that sort of thing in Red Dwarf. But yeah, this was good, which... We'll come on to our ratings in a little while, but we've sort of talked through the last day there, all the key points. But Phil, what was your funniest moment in this episode?
My funniest moment. There were a few contenders, and actually some of them are the ones that actually make slightly cringy, but also funny.
That's
the
fair,
Frank thing was up there, and I thought the Uncle Frank thing was up there. The Samaritan stuff was up there as well. I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah.
There was a bit about you have to die with me when Kryten is pulling his...
deadpan mode.
Yeah, completely deadpan.
The only truly terrible thing is that, as my adopted owner, you have to die with me. You what? Joke. Deadpan mode.
That was quite funny as well. So they were all kind of contenders. I think I might... I'll go for this, because why not? Because Kryten, when they're being really supportive, and Kryten goes, is this the human value you call friendship? And it's like, oh god, this is getting a little bit too cheesy now. And then Lister completely undercuts that with the brilliant line, don't give me that Star Trek crap, it's too early in the morning, which I thought was brilliant. It was just because I thought it was going to go really cheesy.
Oh god, yeah.
And it, is this the human value? It's like one of those lines from sci-fi you hear in lots of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the way that Lister just completely undercuts it, I thought worked really well.
No, it did. And Star Trek is officially canon in the Red Dwarf universe, people. It's been name checked, therefore it's canon. No, that was a good bit. For me, deadpan mode was up there. That whole line, just because again, it's. You're like, what? And then he's like, oh, deadpan mode, it's good. But I think for me, it's got to be the traffic cone. Just because I wasn't expecting it. The setup was brilliant. And the way he revealed it. Because, as I said, I've done that myself. I'm sure a lot of you have. Don't be judging me now. But yeah, I just think it was such a relatable line that you didn't need to throw that in. But they did. And it worked. So yeah, for me, it's got to be the good old traffic cone gag for me. But what about favourite character? Eh?
Well, I think I've got to give it to Kryten, because this is the first episode where he really gets to shine. In the rest of the series, even though he's been a regular character, he's been kind of in the background like an extra, sort of like Cat was in the first 2 seasons. He's kind of felt like, he's just there and throws in the occasional line. Here, the focus was on him, and he did a brilliant, Robert Llewellyn did a brilliant performance. It was good to see a bit of his sort of how he works, his sort of mental state, and so I'm going to give it to Kryten.
Yeah, I'm going to have to follow suit with you there. This really is Kryten's episode. And as you said, not only is it the chance for Kryten to shine this series, but for Robert Llewellyn as well. It's hit the first chance he gets as well, and he does a fantastic job. And I look forward to seeing more of him as we go on, because I believe, as I think you told me before, I believe he now plays Kryten for the rest of the show at the moment anyway, so that's exciting. Just lots of great comedy. He plays it well, both the comedic moments, the more not downbeat moments, but I guess the more emotionally driven moments as well. I always think it's hard when you're playing like an android or a being that is meant to be devoid of like natural emotion, and then you can somehow get it across anyway. It's completely different worlds, but I always draw it back to one of my favorite films ever, The Terminator, especially the second one. That is the definition of this is an emotionless robot who, but, in that film, there are many emotional moments involving that, and you think, how on earth can this robot make me feel emotion? But, Kryten does it as well in that same vein. So, yeah, big up Robert Llewellyn. It's going to be Kryten, which leads nicely into the final regular segment we do, which is the overall rating. So, Phil, The Last Day, how many scutters out of 10?
I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10.
Why an 8?
It had the kind of social commentary aspect, which I like in Red Dwarf, and I missed a little bit this series because it was more heavily prevalent than the first two. But it also had a good mix of action towards the end, and also some quite like emotional character beat moments for both Kryten and Lister as well. So it kind of had a nice mix of everything, and it had some great one-liners and funny sort of laugh out loud moments as well. So yeah, it had a kind of good mix of everything I want in a Red Dwarf episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a solid score. I'm going to go on further. I'm going to give this a 9.
Nice.
Yeah, I really just like this one. I thought for 25 minutes it crammed in so much, but it did it all really well. The fact this is Kryten Spotlight is great. Everyone's on top form. As we've said, it got some really like sweet and heartwarming bits in there as well. The comedy was great. I just really liked it. I don't know if I've given an episode a 9 before. I feel like I might have done once, but I can't remember with which.
I think you gave something a 9.5 at one point.
Oh, did I? Oh, okay. Well, maybe
or was
not.
That
maybe
me?
not top it.
That might have been.
It
me.
might have been. I'm not sure.
I can't remember. One of us has definitely given a 9.5 to something, but I can't remember.
But 9's are few and far between at the minute. So this is a great way to wrap up series 3. Let's put it that way. I'm glad this was the episode. Thinking back of the rest of the series, because really, a lot of these, as we've said, they're sort of interchangeable. You could put these episodes in any order. It wouldn't really make that much of a difference, I suppose, in a lot of cases. And just looking at the series 3 ones, I think this is the perfect fit for a finale. It's got that finale quality about it, even though it isn't explicitly a finale. But yeah, 9 out of 10 for me. So, what a great way to finish off on series 3. Yeah. Folks, we hope you've enjoyed listening. It's been a blast as always. And Series 4 next, Phil, without any vague spoilers, is that one that is also highly revered by the Red Dwarf
I think so.
fan?
Yeah, it's got some good episodes in there. I'm looking forward to seeing them again. It'll be the first time I've seen them in a decade or so. So, yeah.
Wow.
I think it's going to be a good one.
No, I'm looking forward to it. The further we go, although I've been told some of the later seasons that people have said, good luck and all that sort of stuff. But we'll get there.
We'll get there.
I say,
And for Series 4, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have some more guests lined up as well to join us, because we had obviously a couple this time. We had Jamie and Billy came on for a couple of episodes each, one episode each, to join us as guest reviewers. We're going to have some more guest reviewers next series as well, so that will be good.
Yes, yeah, that'll be. We love having guests on. Just add another perspective into the mix, and yeah, as we said earlier, guys, let us know if you're watching this on YouTube. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Did you enjoy The Last Day? Is it one you're not as keen on? What do you think of some of the jokes, some of the comedy? We love hearing your feedback, and just give us your feedback on the show. We enjoy making it, and anything we can do to make it better would be very much appreciated. So, Phil, where can the lovely people find you on the interwebs?
Well, you might be watching this on my YouTube channel already, but if you're not, it's just my name at the moment, Philip Hawkins, and the picture currently is me in front of some TARDIS roundels, so it should be relatively easy to find. You'll know it's me. It's got a lot of Doctor Who content on the channel as well, because I cover all sorts of geeky pop culture, anything I like. So Red Dwarf is obviously, this podcast goes up there, as well as all my Doctor Who stuff, which is maybe 50% of the channel. And then Star Trek, MCU, basically anything that I'm interested in.
Yeah,
Pop
lots and
culture-wise.
lots of lovely pop culture. That's what we like. That's what we like. Wonderful.
What about you, Adam? Where can they find you on the interwebs?
Me? Well, you can find me on YouTube at Adam Martyn with a Y. Similar to Phil, I make videos on all sorts. I'd say about 50% Doctor Who at the minute as well, or maybe a bit more. But I do videos on other topics I find interesting as well. I'm sure if you scroll through, there'll be something there you'll enjoy. If you want to check me out on Twitter as well, it's Adam Martyn AMTV. It might be actor, but well, of course, pre-recording. It's AMTV now. Adam Martyn AMTV. I should pop up. Yeah, come check out my daily ramblings. And you can find Phil on Twitter as well. Forgot to mention.
You can. You can.
Are you holding off on saying the at? Is
well,
that right?
I keep on intending on changing the at. So who knows? By the time this goes out, it might have changed. But knowing my track record of never getting around to doing things that I keep saying I might do one day, it probably hasn't changed. So it's IUDEX_Phil, which is my Twitter handle. If you want to find me on there, I tweet a lot about Doctor Who and other pop culture as well. And we have the show has a Twitter account now as well. So let's just go to that one instead.
Let's just plug that. Yeah.
That is at All Dead Dave Pod.
Yes.
So go find us on there.
Go and follow us there. Just for updates about the show, we'll be promoting new episodes. I'm sure sharing the occasional haha funny as well from Red Dwarf, like using GIFs and stuff. And yeah, upcoming guest announcements we'll put there too. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled because as Phil said, we'll hopefully have some coming on for Series 4. Yeah, and you can also listen to the pod on places like Spotify, Apple, Google, all the usuals. We should pop up there somewhere. But yeah, this has been fantastic as always. Thank you very much for listening, folks. And from me and Phil, until the next one, I'm sure we will catch you next time. Bye-bye.
See you then.